Okay, so we're going to make a scrunchie. First things first, got to make a pattern. I always make a pattern because then if you really like what you've done, you can make it again. Or if you found it didn't work, you know where you can fix it to make it better. So, really a scrunchie is just a rectangle, pretty straightforward. I like to make mine roughly 60 centimeters by 10 centimeters. But I'm going to make it a little bit shorter today and see how we go with that. But obviously the longer it is, the more scrunched up it is. The shorter it is, really just looks like a donut. The wider it is, so I'm doing 10 centimeters, so it ends up being about 4 centimeters once you take the seam allowance out, wide. But if you want like a really full one, you might do 20 centimeters. Really depends on what you're after, but for this we're going to do 55 centimeters by 10 centimeters. So get your ruler out. I'm doing pen, you can use pencil, you can use texta, up to you. I've got crossed lines so I know that I've got a right angle. If you don't, get a protractor out or a set square to help you make sure you get the right lines. So yes, making patterns is how I like to work. Some people like to just get things done and just whack it on the fabric. Sometimes I do that as well, but I think it's just good habit to get in making a pattern for things. Putting a straight grain along here, that's what the red line is for, and I'm just going to call it scrunchie. I'm going to put the dimensions, so 55 centimeters by 10 centimeters, in brackets includes seam allowance, which is S/A. I'm not going to put any cutting instructions because honestly that's depending on how you want to make a scrunchie, but you could, if you wanted, just cut one piece for one scrunchie, then put your name and the date just for your own records. So I've cut out my scrunchie pattern, and now it's time to cut it out on the fabric. I've grabbed just a piece of scrap fabric from my scrap box and I've ironed it already, so please iron it. Just means that everything's a bit more accurate. And I'm now going to cut out my pattern piece from my fabric. So you can pin it, I will be pinning it, or you can mark it with a pen around. I think pinning is better, just in case, I've done this before, you make a mistake with your marking and then your fabric's already ruined. Okay, so I've cut out my piece. The first things first is we're going to sew the edge together, the short edge. Okay, so I've sewn the short edges together with about a 1 centimeter seam. You can do it different ways. There's really no wrong way to make a scrunchie, I don't think. It just depends on what look you're after at the end. So I've decided to show you this way. Just feel like it's the least fiddliest. But yeah. Alright, so ironed it flat, your seam like this. Then we're going to go around the edges and iron over 1 centimeter on both sides. Okay, so I've ironed over both sides of both edges. Now we're going to fold it in half. The right side's out, so the right side is the side where the picture is clearest. If you've got a plain fabric, that might not be as easy to tell, so it's the side with the seam on it. Alright, So creating a loop, matching your seams up like that, creating a loop. So yeah, you fold it in half like this. I'm going to iron it down in place, not all together, just like half like this. It's kind of like a tire. Just so it's staying together nicely. This is probably the fiddliest bit. Depends how you feel about the elastic when we get to it. Alright, now I'm going to pin these edges together. Alright, so I've pinned them together. Pins are on the outside or the inside, doesn't really matter. I'm pinning so that they're facing the sewing machine foot as it's coming towards me, so I can easily pull them out. So I'm going to start sewing at the seam. I'm going to go all the way around sewing the edge together. And I'm going to come and I'm going to leave a gap about 5 centimeters wide because we need to be able to put the elastic in. So yeah, so we're going to sew, and we're going to sew about 2 millimeters in from the edge, just to make sure you've got the edges. Pick a colour that matches, unless you want to make a contrasting statement. Really doesn't matter, but yeah, try and stay as neat as possible. Okay, so you should have sewn around the edge. I don't know if you can see that, so I've chosen white. And you've left a gap. Find my gap. Yeah. Because that's where you put the elastic through. Now, if you've got an elastic threader, looks like this. That is fantastic because that'll make your life so much easier. If you don't have this, just get a safety pin. That'll work just as well. So you're going to want about 20 centimeters of elastic. I found that that's a good hair tie width. If you've got extra thick hair or extra thin hair, feel free to do less elastic or more elastic as needed. If you've got the elastic threader, just tie the elastic around that loop. If you've got a safety pin, just stick the safety pin through the elastic. Now you're going to find your gap and we're going to thread our elastic through. I usually grab a pin and just pin the other end of the elastic to the scrunchie so that it doesn't follow you through, because then your work's just wasted. Thread it through, it comes out the other end, untie it. Depending on your knot, this could be actually quite hard. Okay. Ugh, this is really stiff elastic. Hopefully you're not having as much trouble as me. Alright, get the elastic off. Get rid of your pin or your elastic threader. Make sure you've kept it the way that it came in. Pull the other end. Hold it flat together. About a centimeter over each other. Pin it together, and then you're going to take that to the sewing machine and sew. So I've sewn it together and I've back stitched, so I've gone back and back and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. If you've got a zigzag option on your sewing machine, that can be helpful as well, just because it allows it to stretch as well. But if you've got an industrial like me that doesn't do zigzag, going back and forth will work just fine. Then you just pull it like this and it gets lost into your fabric, and your last step is to sew your gap together. So there. Your scrunchie is finished. Just move the fabric around so it's nice and even, and put it on your wrist, put it in your hair, whatever you want to do. You can adapt your pattern to make it have more volume or less volume, make it wider. You could do it in a silky fabric if you wanted. Yeah, just you can really do whatever you want. This is really a basic form of elastic casing, so this same principle you can use for pants, for skirts, for anything. Obviously, instead of just having a seam finish here, you'd have the skirt attached, and unless it's for a doll, it would be wider. But yeah, have fun making scrunchies.